Shalom and welcome to Biblical Faith with Sam Peak. We invite you to join us as Sam brings a study in the Torah from the Jewish sages. And now our speaker, Sam Peak.
So Shalom Aleichem. We absolutely have to start taping the intermission teaching episodes that we have. We're having a good time talking about certain things, and all of a suddenly we find ourselves actually in a subject that's going to fit right into this Mishnah. We're in chapter 2 in Mishnah number 6 of Pirkei Avot, the chapters of the fathers. Sometimes it's translated the ethics of the fathers, but that's only because Pirkei does not mean ethics, it means chapters of. But they call it the ethics of the fathers because they see in all of these teaching from the sages the ethical teaching of it. Anyway, Pirkei Avot, and we're using the commentary of the Maharal of Prague, put together by a wonderful, nice Rabbi Tuvia Basser, in this commentary that we are using. So we are in chapter 2, Mishnah number 6, speaking of the words of Hillel the Great, okay? He used to say, meaning Hillel, a boor. Now this is a word, a real word, okay? Actually, it's a word, they're transliterating the word directly from Hebrew, boor, okay? A boor cannot be fearful of sin, cannot have the fear of sin. An unlearned person cannot be scrupulously pious, or he can't be a chassid. A bashful person, now we'll have to understand this, a bashful person cannot learn. And the quick and impatient person cannot teach. Anyone excessively occupied in business cannot become a scholar. And in a place where there are no people, meaning to take charge, to lead, to teach, try to be a person, try to be a human being who will take charge, who will lead, who will teach. If there's no one else there to do it, you should try to be that person. Okay, now again, Pirkei Avot, all of these sayings, they are all connected, as the Maharal has shown us over and over again, but they all also stand on their own. They're one-liners in a sense. One-liners that are connected by a thread all the way through. So, but let's go first to the Maharal of Prague and see what he says about this. The terms boor, beit vav resh in Hebrew, boor, and an unlearned person, actually that unlearned person is called am haaretz. I can't tell you how many times, a long time ago when I was still trying to help Christian people have some kind of understanding of the Christian Testament, the Christian scriptures, and in those circles were some Christian scholars who learned Hebrew, and so they came and found out that our word, the idiom that's used in Mishnaic Hebrew in the first century in Israel for not an idiot, but an ignoramus, okay? Somebody, and what that means, it doesn't mean they're stupid. It means they're simply ignorant. They just don't know. Was am haaretz, okay? Am is people, haaretz is the land. So the people of the land, that's the idiom. But the point I'm trying to make is at that time, those people who learned that were extremely critical of the Pharisaic sages, the sages of the Pharisees, extremely critical of them, saying, well, they regarded the common people as idiots. That's not what it says. Idiot's not the same as an ignoramus. An idiot doesn't mean, they're not stupid people, and they're not bad people. That's never what the sages are saying. Absolutely at all. But am haaretz is simply a Hebrew idiom. The people of the land is simply a Hebrew idiom of people who are not scholars. They don't study Torah, and they are ignorant of the halakha, and they are ignorant of, it doesn't mean they're bad people, they're good Jews, but they are ignorant of the intricacies of Torah study. So this is what Hillel is talking about, and it's not a derogatory thing. He's simply stating facts, that's all. So a boor, he says, and an unlearned person emphasize different aspects of a person who is void of Torah and wisdom. The word boor, he says, emphasizes a lack of knowledge. It depicts a person who is intellectually barren. And this boor is a direct transliteration from the Hebrew. It's boor also in Hebrew. Who's intellectually barren. The term am haaretz, an unlearned person, emphasizes a lack of wisdom. And because of that lack of wisdom, it manifests itself through a lack of refinement, okay, in his conduct, in his derek eretz, his way of the land, the way he conducts himself. First, he says, a boor cannot be fearful of sin. This is amazing, one who lacks Torah knowledge cannot acquire the fear of Hashem or the fear of sin. He says, we will present later on in Mishnah 14 that the term Yireh Chet is associated, meaning the fear of sin, is associated with the purest form of intellectual development, of seko. Do we catch what he's saying? It's an amazing thing. Basically, he's saying if you are ignorant of Torah knowledge, if you don't have Torah knowledge, you will never, ever come to a place where you actually fear sin. What we were talking about earlier, when we were talking about Rabbi Ashilag's understanding of God's providence. And one of those levels, he says that a person comes to an understanding of God's providence is the fear of sin. Meaning now we understand what it is that sin does. It just doesn't bring a punishment to us. It literally screws up the entire universe. It pollutes the entire universe. It makes everything worse. On and on and on. We could just go on and on and on. But the only way we come to that knowledge is through the Torah. Without the Torah, we honestly don't have a clue what's the big deal about sin anyway. All because he said you shouldn't do? What does he know? If he's even around. You understand what I'm trying to say? Many, many people are walking around with that idea. Even many religious people who think they are religious or have that kind of thinking. Hillel the Great is exactly 100% correct, and so is the Maharal, who's interpreting it for us. One who lacks Torah knowledge cannot acquire the fear of sin. The rabbis say, and this is a quote actually, he's going to quote another Mishnah from Pirkei Avot from chapter 3 and Mishnah 17. If there is no wisdom, then there is no fear of heaven. And a person who does not have some intellectual inclination cannot develop the fear of God because he cannot clearly perceive God's influence. He doesn't see that God's running the world. Right. People fear the king only when they are in his proximity. When they are far from the king, then they are no longer as impressed by him, and they no longer feel the same degree of fear. They nail it. They hit it right on the head. Amen. The boor is doomed to be remote from Hashem and not to fear him properly, because closeness to Hashem arises only through the intellect. And when they're talking about sekel, the intellect, they mean Torah study, Torah knowledge, the knowledge and wisdom that comes from God's Torah. That's what they mean. That's an amazing statement. Now the next one about the Am Haaretz, the people that so many Christian scholars used to accuse us that we are prejudiced against the poor farmer out there. Actually, most of the time, it's not even a reference. Am Haaretz is not even a reference to a farmer in Israel who lives on a farm, because that farmer probably knows more halakha than some rabbis. He has many agricultural halakhic things. So that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about people who don't want to have anything to do with the Torah. Okay? They don't want to learn. And they're not going to learn. Those are the Am Haaretz. An unlearned person cannot be scrupulously pious. Maharal says, the Hebrew term hasid, a pious person, listen to this. It's not what we think of it in English. Give me 1 second. I should have bought one more slippery elm. Yeah. Listen to this. This is the exact opposite sometimes of what in English we would think of a person who is pious. A person who is pious, oh, they're praying all the time and they, on and on and on. Listen to what the Maharal says. The Hebrew term hasid, a pious person, applies to a person of action. A person of action. Not a person who sits and cloisters himself and doesn't have anything to do with anybody else and sits and just reads books and studies Torah inside by himself, Not like a monk. That's not a pious person, according to the Hebrew. A hasid is a person of action. It denotes a person who goes beyond every strict bound of duty to do more than the minimal requirement. In other words, he goes beyond the letter of the halakha, the letter of the law. Yeah, sure, this is the minimum that I can do to fulfill it, and I fulfilled the halakha. I've pleased Hashem absolutely by fulfilling it. The hasid, he's a person of action, and he goes beyond that. He goes even beyond. It's not always necessary to do that, but the hasid does more than the minimal requirement. So, they say true wisdom, which is really what a hasid has. He has the real wisdom. This is why, this is all based on, I better not get into that. I was going to talk, the Lubavitcher Hasidim, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, why he named the movement Chabad. Chabad is an acronym that stands for the sekel. It stands for the sfirot that are in the head, okay? Chokmah, wisdom. Bina, understanding. Da'at, knowledge. Cha, the chet or the ch from chokmah, wisdom. The b from bina, understanding, and the d from da'at, knowledge. Chabad, okay? That's why it's called that. And that's why he named it. And this is the idea. They are Hasidim because all begins with wisdom. This is the source of everything. And where do we get wisdom? Wisdom is the beginning of the fear of Hashem.
Right. Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
The beginning of wisdom, actually, that's the way it is. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of Hashem. Where do we get that? We just found out that we can't have the fear of Hashem if we don't know Torah. We just learned that. See how it's built step by step? We just learned we really can't have either the fear of sin or the fear of Hashem without Torah, without knowledge of Torah. So if the beginning of wisdom is the fear of Hashem, once we get the fear of sin, once we get the fear of Hashem, now we are just beginning to start to have Torah wisdom. So true wisdom, he says, it refines and redefines human action, the way we live our life. As a result, if a person is fully given over to wisdom, then he directs his deeds, meaning his thoughts, speech, and actions, towards the good of all people. Not just few, all. Going beyond the strict call of duty, the bare minimum requirement of halakha. In contrast, the Am Haaretz, the unlearned person, he does not direct his talents and skills towards goodness. Why? Because he lacks Torah wisdom. He doesn't have it. And again, we could relate this again. What is it that changes a person from the Torah back to Rabbi Yehuda Lev Ashlag and the Kabbalah, his introduction to the Zohar? What is it? That is what actually allows us to begin to transform that strict will to receive for ourselves alone, meaning self-centeredness, being egotistical, being always in it, what's in it for me, being the defining motivation of our actions, into doing for others and pleasing Hashem. It's a beautiful picture. Okay. In summary, he says, a lack of Torah wisdom actually leaves one unable to acquire the fear of heaven and disinclined to offer any extra effort to help others. Boom. Let's go on. We're in a hurry. The bashful person cannot learn. We need to look at this. And the quick and impatient person cannot teach. The Maharal says, some people explain this Mishnah to mean that a shy person will not ask the right questions that are necessary to fill the gaps in his knowledge, and that an impatient teacher makes the students afraid to even ask such a question, okay? That, he says, though, even though it may be true, that is a shallow explanation, he says, because it doesn't do justice to the profound truths that are behind the message of the rabbis, of the sages. There must be something more to it than just that, even though that may be the lowest level of understanding. He said, this Mishnah can be properly understood through the following principle. There has to be a teacher-student relationship. A teaching relationship can be effective only if the teacher and the student and the subject matter have something in common. A bashful person cannot learn. The Torah is described as fire. In fact, he quotes from Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah 23:29, "Is not my word like fire, says Hashem." And the metaphor of fire conveys intolerance for anything less than perfection. Devarim 33 and verse 2, "From his right hand went forth a fiery law, a fiery Torah for the people of Israel." So the Torah is described as fire. It is the impassioned character of the nation of Israel, he says, that makes them especially attuned to the Torah, and a student of Torah must also have a little fire in their character, literally, a fiery character in order to be receptive to the Torah. Conversely, a shy personality, which is the opposite of fire, or a bashful personality, really, which is the opposite of fire, this is not, I don't want people to misunderstand this. This is not saying that it's not a good quality to be shy, a good quality to be modest, a good quality in that sense. You understand what I'm saying? That this is not what that's talking about. We're talking about in the process of learning. So a shy personality, which is the opposite of fire, is not always receptive to the fiery Torah because his spirit's not in harmony with the spirit of Torah. Let me put it another way. Everybody who is so laid back in the sense that it's all being done for me, I don't have to do anything, I'm perfectly happy, I'm perfectly comfortable with either my belief system or the way that I live or my relationship with God, whether I have one or don't. Everybody has one, so just some of us aren't aware of it. We're sleepwalking and not aware of it. Anyway, I'm perfectly happy. Don't stir up the water. Don't tell me anything about that over there, because that might mean I have to do something, okay? This is really what it's talking about. A person who doesn't, that spirit, which is like water in a sense, is not receptive to the fire of the Torah, which literally says that we should be doing something. Not to get saved, that's not the point. That's not even the point at all. We should be doing something in order to please God. We should be doing something in order to come closer to Him. We should be doing something in order to transform all those things that stand in the way between us and Him and in our perception of Him in the world. This is the idea more than anything else. The quick and impatient person cannot teach. As we said before, he says, the student, the teacher, and the subject matter have to share qualities in common. If the student is to be receptive, have to share qualities in common if the student is to be receptive. People are both practical and intellectual. He says they can relate to the Torah because it is likewise a mix of practical law and fiery intellect. However, he says if a teacher adds the additional fire of his own impatience to the fire of the Torah, then there is too much fire. The student, he says, the studies then become intolerable And as a result, you shut down the receptivity of the student. He can't really receive from you anymore. You shut him down. So he says the metaphor of fire refers to being inflexible and intolerant of anything less than perfect truth. This is Rabbi Basser's idea. He's saying that. That's his explanation. And a subject that is fiery appeals to an intelligent person's demand for precision and truth. A fiery teacher of the fiery Torah demands a thorough and precise grasp of a deep and exacting subject. And that combination is actually more than most students can bear. Some of them can, but most of them can't. It's more than they can handle. Very interesting. Anyone excessively occupied in business cannot become a scholar. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory, but let's see what the Maharal says. He says, this statement is included in the Mishnah because it's another example of a person whose character is not in harmony with the conceptual nature of Torah. We live in a physical world of interaction, but if one is to develop wisdom, he must foster the conceptual side of his personality. One who is too much involved, meaning too much involved in business, that's their life, instead of their tool. One who is too much involved in trade, in buying, traveling, and selling, he says, has a much stronger attachment to the physical world than to the conceptual. That person, he says, is unlikely to achieve great intellectual growth. Oy vey, I'm not going to finish Mishnah number 6. Let him go on. He says, the warning of this Mishnah is for those who just buy and sell without adding value to the product. He says it really doesn't apply to those people who are artisans, okay, or otherwise improve the objects that they sell. You know, the Maharal even says if you're just buying and selling, that's not really work. He says work means that you are adding value to something in the world, okay? So work is something done by an artisan, by a craftsman, by someone who is skilled at improving something. He said, but just the business of buying and selling, he said, that's really not work because you're not improving the world, okay? You're just improving your pocketbook, okay? Okay. He says it does not apply even to those who buy and sell in moderation, according to their needs. He says, we are, after all, physical human beings, and we are only part of us is intellectual, meaning, and when he says intellectual, he's talking about that part of our soul that comes from Hashem. He's talking about the mokin, the brains of the image, okay, of God in us. However, one who is so occupied with trade that he is completely engrossed in the material side of life will simply not succeed in becoming a scholar. Why? Because, again, every one of these things, we can take Rabbi Ashlag, the Baal HaSulam's prescription about how everything that's messed up, no matter what it is, comes from the will to receive for yourself alone. And that's what this is, where that's the most important thing, simply put. Now, what's in the commentary of the Maharal on the rest of this Mishnah is too long for us to get in the rest of this program. He is going to give us 4 prescriptions for spiritual health. So I think actually it's probably a good idea if we'll wait for that till the next time we're together, and we can hit the highlights of this again, get everybody on the same track, and then do these 4 prescriptions for spiritual health. And it will be interesting, and it will be beneficial for us. I guarantee it. Okay, I hope you're enjoying Pirkei Avot. There's so much there to learn. And again, I stress to you that what we're learning, the Maharal of Prague would never tell you that he wrote a definitive, completely exhaustive commentary on Pirkei Avot. He is just bringing little things out that he sees, okay, that are very interesting and very unique. And we can study them over and over and over again. You know, we learn Pirkei Avot from Passover to Sukkot. We learn it every Shabbat afternoon. That's a long time. That's 6 months out of the year. We go a chapter every Shabbat, a chapter of Pirkei Avot in the afternoon. That's why almost all Jews everywhere, they may not know much Gemara, they may not know much Talmud, but they will know a whole lot of Pirkei Avot. And that's why Pirkei Avot is so important, and that's why there's so much packed in these little one-line shots, okay? All right, so I actually recommend you do that, you know. Wait after Passover, and then just every Shabbat, try to develop the habit to begin to study from Passover. I think it's either Sukkot or Rosh Hashanah, maybe Rosh Hashanah, to try to study a chapter, just a chapter of Pirkei Avot. Just read it to yourself, and you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed at the difference it makes for you as time goes by. It really will. There'll be so many things in life, and suddenly something from one of the great sages of Israel, from the fathers, will come to you, and you'll go, wow, that's exactly right on the money, you know? And they had so much wisdom. Okay, Toda Rabbah, and I guess I'll see you the next time. Shalom uvracha, peace and a blessing to you. By the way, before we go, Jason, I should have done it at the first, but I want to do it at the end. I really miss John Polk sitting in our audience in this particular class. So let's dedicate, we'll dedicate the Torah study of Pirkei Avot that we just did, the last 30 minutes to the memory of John, and may his memory be for a blessing to all of us. Okay. All right. Shalom uvracha, peace and a blessing. See you the next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us in our study. If you enjoyed this study and are interested in learning more from the Torah and the sages of Israel, then check us out on the internet at www.bfm101.com, or you may contact us toll-free at 1-800-639-0169. Our mailing address is Biblical Faith, P.O. Box 2, Abilene, Texas 79604. Until next time, we wish you shalom uvracha, peace and a blessing.